Hey, I'm catiewahwah, and today I wanted to talk to you about Björk's latest album, Utopia. So I've been listening to this album quite a bit recently, and I really wanted to just talk about it. So I thought I'd try a different style of video from my usual reviews. This is going to be more of a first impressions, kind of initial reactions video. I'm just going to be running through some of my initial thoughts and ideas. I haven't really processed them yet, so I can't 100% say that I know what the bigger picture is in my head yet. But basically I just wanted to kind of get them out in video form, share some of them with you. And so if you have any interpretations of this album or just general thoughts or ideas that it sparked, I'd love it if you put a comment down below with your thoughts about it, and then maybe we can just have like a collective understanding of the album. I might still do a proper album review of this later on, so do let me know if you'd like to see that. So when I first heard some of the tracks from this album, I got really excited and I went and pre-ordered the Rough Trade Special Edition. So this is the edition with the pink coloured vinyl, and it is beautiful. I feel like it goes very well with my existing Björk record collection. If you've seen my video on that, all of my Björk records currently are all pressed on coloured vinyl. I'll put a link to my record collection video in the description and also at the end, just in case you want to check it out to see my thoughts on some of Björk's other albums. This is, rather excitingly, a double LP, and the full listening time clocks in at 1 hour and 11 minutes. Which is pretty impressive for an album. I feel like that's like 2 albums practically. On the back, they've described the album as conceived by Björk and Arca. And I find that phrasing really interesting. It immediately calls to mind these ideas of like conception, birth, parenthood, and just these general maternal, paternal themes that Björk's exploring on this album. So yeah, immediately there's like a little hint as to what's within. So let's start off with a little chat about the artwork, because let's face it, like a lot of the time that is going to be your first impression of an album, and I think with Björk's albums there's always such an incredible visual expression to them that it would be like completely unfair not to chat about this first. So from the album cover we can straight away see that there's this new character that Björk's developed. She's this bird-like creature with a beak for a nose, and it's also kind of studded with pearls. Now you may be thinking, that looks quite interesting. And yeah, I think that it is definitely, I think the word is yonic. If you don't know what that means, look it up. Y-O-N-I-C. It's definitely, I think, a very specific visual reference, and I'm pretty sure it's deliberate. So this bird also has these kind of gelatinous feathers or body, and it's unclear, I think, quite deliberately what animal this is supposed to be. I mean, although it is kind of bird-like, she also does have more human characteristics. She's kind of an alien almost, or there's this human-animal hybrid to her. And as I said, I think that that's a very deliberate unfamiliarity, and I think I would describe this character as uncanny. The eyes particularly kind of reminded me of homogenic eyes, in that they are human, but they're also animal-like, and you can't quite put your finger on what they're supposed to be. I'm not sure if that is what bird eyes look like. If you do know, please do let me know in the comments, because I don't know, does it? I can't really tell. I don't know enough about birds, I don't think, to know properly what this is. It also took me a little while to notice that there's this sort of baby bird fetus at her neck, which is an interesting little extra. It continues this image of this maternal protector. Another point that took me a little while to notice was the flute just here. So I don't know if any other instruments have ever featured quite so prominently on Björk album covers. Like, I was trying to think, and unless I'm missing something really obvious, I don't think they ever have. But the flute features quite prominently throughout the album. So I think it's no mistake that it's so central to this character here. I also noticed that the holes on the flute are echoed on the bird's throat, so it's almost as if the bird is able to produce those same flute-like sounds. And then in turn, those holes reminded me of like the nostrils in a beak. So turning to the back, we've got this heart shape. It's kind of a sideways heart made from various shapes. So at first I thought that these were quite botanical shapes, or maybe some coral, but on closer inspection, I'm not 100% sure. Like, I think they might be mathematical mathematical graphs or illustrations or something. I don't know, I was just trying to figure out what they might be, and they just are so hard to place what exactly these are. Again, if you have any idea what these are, please let me know, because I'm just trying to unravel this mystery. Also interesting on here, just like a nice little feature I noticed, is that the track listing is actually ascending with each side of the album. So the A side is down there, then the B side comes up slightly, then the C, and then the D. When we open it up to the gatefold, there is again this kind of heart shape, but it's rotated, and now I think it's very clearly fallopian tubes and a uterus, which, you know, pretty easily ties into that maternal theme. And again, it's made of these same biological, natural shapes. I was really struck by the textures here. There's this intricacy and detail that's fascinating to each of these shapes, and it made me think a bit more about that gelatinous body on the front and how those textures are just so, I don't know, so interesting. I can't quite figure out what it is about them, but they're really, I don't know, you feel like you could touch them. So as this is a double album, there's a record in each of these sides, and you've got these little sleeves in here with the lyrics on one side, and then, so this is the A, B, and this has a dedication. One thing that I really liked as well about this album is that, I don't know if you can see, but inside the sleeves in the album, where you can't actually open it up, there are still these intricate patterns and illustrations. This whole theme of like beautiful hidden crevices that I find really interesting. Yeah, I don't know. There's something going on there, isn't there? There's like something really obvious going on. I always really like reading the dedications in albums because I think it gives you such an insight into the creation just straight away. So Björk writes, "Making this album was such a bliss. Grateful to my creative lush nest this music came from." That's like a bird-like image. Again, she's got this creative nest, and then she's listed loads of people, and thanks to the flute girls. There's going to be a lot of flute. Grateful to my most precious work family. But most of all, I thank this album to Alejandro for being up for a merge and learning to enter and exit it without, I'm not quite sure what the last word says, but I think that's to Arca, isn't it? For this creative merge that they've done on this album. And then she has a dedication to, I think it's her daughter, Sindri. "You are my everything." Lovely. So yeah, so I always think it's a really good idea to have a look at those dedications because it just gives you some, even though it's like a retrospective dedication, it gives you this immediate insight into the artist. So that is everything that I got from just the packaging and the artwork and the presentation, which I think is quite a lot still to get from it. We've already got so many clues about what this album is going to be like. You know, we've got birds, we've got biology, we've got nature, we've got motherhood, so much. Flutes. So now I'm going to be running through the actual album track by track. I don't think that I'm going to cut in many like videos or music to this bit. So if you do have your own copy of the album or via streaming, then I would advise that you grab yourself a copy and maybe listen along. I'm not really sure how that's going to work, but I will clearly signpost each new track. So our opening track is Arisen My Senses. It opens up with these almost bird sounds, harps, and the sound that reminded me of like a mechanical object whirring into gear or winding itself up to start working in the morning. There's this kind of screeching and blurring the lines between natural birdsong and more mechanic sounds. I mean, it's kind of like a machine that needs oiling, it's creaking, and there's this repetition of that mechanical winding up, punctuated by delicate harps and birdsong. It's this interesting juxtaposition that hits us straight away. So it's definitely like an awakening. It's kind of both organic and mechanical, if that's possible. I don't know, like a kind of like cyborg feel to it. And then in terms of the vocals, we've got these yearning vocals, just full of longing, layered over each other. Arisen My Senses ends with sounds that reminded me of water. So I definitely heard some dripping, and I think I heard some roaring waves. I don't know if that's what everyone's gonna hear, or if I've just been at the beach too much, but I'm interested to know if anyone else is hearing the water sounds at the end of that. Track 2 is Blissing Me, and this was also, I think, the first single. I can see why it was the first single, because I think it is definitely the most accessible track on the album. Again, there are these delicate harps, and there's something beautiful and like precious about this track. It's so loving. And here there's a really interesting juxtaposition between the music and the lyrics. So while the music is kind of traditional and quite romantic, the lyrics are very modern. Björk sings about two music nerds obsessing and sending each other MP3s. I think overall there's definitely a sense of love in the music, and it's just a general impression of beauty and care. The production as well is stunning on this track. I don't think I've really thought about it enough, but it's just lovely. So like Arisen My Senses, on Blissing Me there are these layered voices and this sense of longing. I think that's something that Björk builds up throughout the album. And okay, so I don't know if this was just me, and like when I listened back to it again I wasn't sure if I could hear it, but I think that there's a beat slightly like a heartbeat going on through this song. It's something that does recur in other tracks and I can't tell if it's a heartbeat or not. Blissing Me also has one of those gorgeous rolled R's that Björk does, like quite near the end of the song. I feel like this song is really aptly named because it's called Blissing Me and it just gives you this feeling of bliss. The third track is The Gate, and this was the second single. I remember when it was released there was this sense of mystery because it kind of hinted at the content of the album but didn't give too much away. It's just like a literal gate into this utopia. The choral style really reminded me of Medulla and those vocal choral experiments on that album. While interestingly, I thought that the style simultaneously reminded me of Björk and Arca, which made me realize how well they work together and how like natural a match this was. There are these bird call songs in The Gate as well, and these, I think it's cicadas, you can just hear them just underneath, and there's something going on there. I don't know what it is yet, but it's good. I also really enjoyed the repetition of the phrases care for you and care for me. I thought that was done really well throughout the song, and the evolution from care for you to care for me as well. And just generally, the track has this really lovely, enveloping, welcoming sound to it. I think it's very rare to encounter music outside of traditional classical music that creates such a sense of place as this song, and indeed this whole album does. I mean, it definitely feels like this is the gate to some utopia, some strange new world. So flipping over to the B-side, the next track is Body Memory. Contrasting with The Gate, this opens with a kind of haunting, darker, more ominous sound. There are lines like, do I accept my ending? And throughout, I heard this sound, like the only reference I had for it was it sounded like a record skipping, but I think it might have been an instrument being like scraped in some strange way. I feel like I need to research that to figure out how they made that sound, but it's kind of disconcerting when you're in the flow of something and just suddenly it's like, eh? Again, there are these gorgeous beats, vocals, choral harmonies, all working together. And I thought there was this interesting, again, another juxtaposition, another odd combination that strangely complements itself perfectly. But there's a sense of kind of a heavenly ascent throughout the song, while also this biological sense of being grounded within a physical body. It almost sounds painful, like somebody stumbling through with a body that refuses to move. We feel every ache here. Body Memory is quite a long song, and the lyrics as well are very long. That sounds like such like a basic reaction to have to this, but in general, I mean, it feels like it is a poem, you know? Like it's a ballad, it's a folk story. It's not just a song, like however much you can say something is just a song, but it's this whole tale, this whole experience, as opposed to just like a modern album track. And this is one of the reasons that I love Björk. She is on top of her game. She like truly expresses and experiments. It's, yeah. The next track is called Loss, with 3 S's. I don't know why I find that so weird. I think it works. It adds that extra hiss to the word loss, which already is a negative idea. That's just, I don't know, is that calling up the Garden of Eden? What is that doing? What is that referencing? I don't know. But this song, fittingly, is again quite an ominous, haunting one. We have these layered hearts, general ominous sounds, and more mechanical noises. It did remind me a lot of Arca's other work, including his tracks on his self-titled album and also on FKA Twigs' album LP1. Those mechanical sounds break down into these more industrial sounds, but then they're also still like drums. I don't know, there's like a really interesting transition there. And the whole track ends with this really ominous spiral of music, which is almost Hitchcockian. I wrote in my notes that it's almost like ending a film on a cliffhanger because it's like halfway through the album. There's a sudden change in the mood and we don't know what's going to happen next. Or do we? Because we just put on the next record and it's side C. And the track is the title track, Utopia. Utopia opens with more of these bird-like sounds. I was trying to think, have they sampled birdsong? Is this some instrument that's recreating that sound? It's quite difficult to tell because I think you hear a certain type of sound and your brain just lodges it into birdsong. You don't necessarily analyze like, oh, this is this bird, this is this bird, this is definitely not a bird, unless you are like a ornithologist. I would love it if an ornithologist would like just identify every bird in this album. That'd be brilliant. I really enjoyed the way that those bird sounds were combined with classical instruments on Utopia. So I'm not sure, again, if these are like natural bird sounds or like a flute sounding like a bird or some combination of the two. Maybe they've done some blending in production. I don't know. But a couple of lines I really enjoyed and picked out from the song were bird species never seen or heard before, the first flute from the first fauna. Now that made me think that maybe these birds are not meant to be any natural bird. Maybe this idea of this utopia, this idea of this kind of alien bird-like creature is that this is a new world and these are new birds. But at the same time, the first flute from the first fauna, like, is that no human instrument can ever be as beautiful as the first one created but naturally by animals? I don't know. And then there's also the line toxic tumour, which really stuck in my mind. I'm not really sure why. The next track is called Saint, and this is a beautiful track. I think this is music anthropomorphized. So Björk sings about this seemingly woman who is doing all of these wonderful things, who like tends to her father when he's dying, but then she praises music. I don't know, I feel like this whole song just needs to be unpacked. Like, what is Björk actually singing about on this song? I think it's music. I think the whole thing is like an allegory for music as a saint, in the idea that music is this balm for weary souls. Music has these maternal qualities, but I'm not 100% on that yet. I also noticed that in terms of the production on this, there is this steady beat to it, but it's almost like being underwater, or even in utero. Like, you feel as if you're hearing it through something else, through some other medium. The next track, Courtship, really reminded me of Volta. I found the imagery that it created of relationships really beautiful and sad and poetic. Like, there's this bit where she sings about narrating your own heart tale and threading souls onto one beam. That's just so... I still don't think I've quite figured that one out, because I think it's kind of mind-blowing, right? Like, that whole image that your entire romantic life is just your heart tale and you make people fit onto it and you have this one steady narrative and everyone else just will fit onto it? I don't know. What do you make of that line? So the 9th track on the album is Sue Me, and I definitely feel like I need to research this because I was listening to this and I was like, okay, this sounds like a very personal track, but I don't know if it's, not if it's real, but like how much it relates to Björk's actual personal life, or if she's like writing as a character, or if she's writing someone else's story. I was very struck by the scary, defiant tone to it, and the way that you can hear specific voices mixed in. There is definitely the sense of her being this maternal guardian. It represents this dark twist on the album and a change in the flow of the album. I don't think I would have immediately thought of this song to go on an album called Utopia, but it does fit. It works naturally, but it is so different as well. I thought it was really clever as well how Björk uses these catchy repetitions of the phrase "sue me." Like, it really is like she does not care. She's like, "Sue me, sue me, sue me, sue me." And I was singing along to it, so I was like, oh no, everyone's gonna sue me. But there's something really nice about that defiance of just saying, yeah, sue me, so what? The 10th track, Tabula Rasa, I think begins a scheme within the album which is very much about creating a new utopia as opposed to discovering one that exists, but it's more about building one. So Tabula Rasa does, I think, open with a repetition of the Blissing Me melody, which is interesting. And it is all about this love for the next generation, I think probably from Björk for her daughter, towards the idea of making the world a better place for the next generation, and specifically fitting into this larger context that I'm not sure was intentional, because obviously the production on this would have been, you know, taken years to do. But it does fit well into this Me Too movement. Finally standing up, finally saying, no, this is not okay. And yes, it does happen. That sense of demanding change because it is gone on for too long. I'm not sure how much this track is addressing that movement specifically, but to my ears, it definitely fitted with the general message. And I think this flows really nicely into the next track, which is Claim Staker, kind of all about that idea of staking a claim on some brave new world. Björk sounds triumphant in this, like she is truly making this claim. And she sings about this forest in me, singing about birds, forests, nests, and home. And all the while, once more, we have these beautiful layered vocals. Oh, it's so nice. It's so good. This then flows into the 12th track on the album, Paradisa. Paradisa is entirely instrumental. I think it's a flute piece. I'm not sure. I need to check that. It is really lovely. The name made me think immediately of Birds of Paradise, and I was also interested by the way that Björk's chosen clearly the feminine version of it. I think that Paradise is usually referred to as Paradiso, because isn't it Cinema Paradiso? So to change that to Paradisa is like female paradise, which does basically sum up this idea that Björk and Arca have presented. Second to last, the 13th track on the album is called Features Creatures. I thought that this was like, I liked it, but I thought that this was the least fitting with the album. I don't know what it is about it, but it's almost like it's exploring a completely different idea. And although it does fit within the general theme and the sound of the album, it does stick out a bit as like a different tone. I don't mean that in a bad way at all, by the way. I really liked it. But yeah, it sticks out, doesn't it? And I think the person who wrote it with Björk only wrote this track, so I think that might be why that was. Features Creatures features these nocturnal sounds. There's almost a hooting in the chorus like an owl. Björk's syncopation on this is absolutely lovely, and I think it really adds to that slightly creepy tone of the song. It's quite a haunting track, actually. It's almost like children's poetry, or maybe a children's song that's just gone a bit too creepy. Like, I very much think that it would belong in a kind of Tim Burton world. Again, I don't think I've fully unpacked this track's place within the album, but it has struck me as like a bit odd. There's something a bit off about it. The final track on the album is Future Forever, and I don't know, to be honest, I didn't write that many notes on this song because I was overall struck by this sense of love. Like, there is so much hope and love in this song. There is so much of wanting the world to be a better place, of wanting things to be better, of wanting to create that utopia. And I think I just got like sucked into it. I got sucked into that beauty, and that's all I have to say about it. So, there you go. Those were my initial first impressions of Björk's latest album, Utopia. I would really, really love to hear what your interpretations of this album have been. So please do either put them in a comment down below, or you can tweet them at me or Instagram them at me. I'll put my links on the screen. And yeah, like I find this album so interesting. I mean, I find all of Björk's albums interesting, but it's just so nice to like get a new one to dissect. That sounds a bit weird though when it's all about birds. I don't want to dissect birds. Also, please do let me know if you would like to see these initial thoughts turned into a more structured review. So I would be organising that generally more by themes. If there's anything in particular that I've mentioned, like maybe in passing, maybe in word vomity initial reactioniness that you thought was like really interesting, it would probably be really helpful if you point that out in a comment as well, just because I might not have realised that it actually made sense. And if you're just finding my channel for the first time, or you've been watching a couple of my videos and you're like, hey, she seems cool, then why not click subscribe? If you make sure you turn on the little notification bell, then you'll also get a little alert whenever I post a new video or if I start live streaming. So that can be useful if you don't want to miss out on that. Speaking of live streaming, I also do have a live stream scheduled for this Sunday. That's going to be Sunday the 28th of January, and it is going to be at 8 p.m. English time. So I don't know what time that is where you are. We're going to be talking about all of the music that I missed during my unintentional hiatus, so it should be a really fun catch up, and I would love to see you there. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!